Does that, because when I was taking
Most
in like two
definitely.
What's going on
volleyball,
with
my
sand
car was
box?
reading like 24,
These kids
but on the
that
way
told
back,
you,
it
first
jumped
and
to like
second
18.
Yeah.
for
Well, I don't know where, I think
wheelchair
Paul's
kids.
probably coming, but we're
So
gonna
they
get
can
started
put
because we have a,
Put their wheelchair right up under.
we have a quorum,
and
I think we can
They
get
sit
started.
outside,
Yeah.
So,
and so one of my dads said, Ivan, I can.
so we're gonna
Yes, we
open
can.
up tonight's town board work session for January 15, 2016 at 6:05. We have two items this evening on the agenda: to receive information of topics of business in order to exchange ideas and opinions regarding these topics. So our first item is Mr. McCarter is going to be talking to us about is the Downtown Development Authority backlots and the friendly eminent domain. That's how I'm going to term it.
Okay, yes.
Oxymoron.
Friendly in the sense that we have gone door to door and asked people how they feel about it. What we found is what we call the area of unknown ownership. The map that's in your materials identifies it. It's 0.106 acres. It's just over 1/10 of an acre, so it's not a lot of land. But it's right in the middle of what likely will be the redevelopment project for the DDA that's under consideration this year. So I offered to the DDA that the town could use its powers of eminent domain, take title to this property, and then make it available for public purposes like water, sewer, sidewalks, pedestrian, parking, that kind of thing. So the surrounding landowners, the folks who own the buildings to the south of this, have been approached by the DDA and are aware that we have this in mind for 2018. It's because nobody has a claim of ownership to it, at least not that anyone has presented to us. We feel that the eminent domain case should go pretty smoothly. If someone makes a claim to ownership, then we'll deal with it. You know, if they have a viable ownership claim, that's what eminent domain is intended to resolve, is who owns it, what's it worth. And if it's true that no one owns it, and it could be truly an orphaned parcel, just a place that has no mommy or daddy, then we will take it and we will hold it for public purposes, which is the whole point of eminent domain. The first step, as I said in my memo, is that the town board passes a resolution authorizing me to initiate the case. Once I get that, I will order some title work to make certain that we know of anybody who might have an interest in the property. We lay that out in a complaint, we serve it, we publish it, and then we eventually get in front of a judge to help us sort this out. So the first step is to, and we've talked a little about this before, this is not the first conversation, although Cindy, I don't know whether you were in on it, but the idea is it's 2018, so it's time to get moving on this project. So that's my report. The map is in the materials if you want to talk about where this is and how it relates to other ownership along the way.
Where do we go forward from here? What's next?
What would be next is on the 22nd of January, you would see in probably your consent calendar, resolution authorizing me to go forward. It's statutory, we have to have that.
We've already hired the legal counsel to help out with that, haven't we? Isn't that?
That's the sewer line extension to
Okay.
the north. So that's a separate deal. This is much less complicated than that. And that's why I'm handling it, mostly to save us money, to help the DDA. So when the time comes.
I thought you had talked about legal counsel that we had retained or something regarding this or something.
We did for the north sewer line extension, and that's in our
Ian,
budget.
this is south of the alley, I guess, between the buildings and,
Yeah. So you've got, and part of the alley area, I mean, if you look at the map.
it looks like it cuts one of the buildings.
Yeah.
So you're going around that building?
We're gonna go around the building. We've already talked with that property owner and said, we're not gonna condemn a corner of your building. So the legal description in the court decree, assuming we get there, would work around any buildings that are extended into it. And also, if you look really closely at the parcel is 1, 2, 3 over from Fifth Street,
Mm-hmm.
3 to the east. There's a little stairway
Oh,
there.
I was wondering, is that patio? It's a stairway.
And so we are, that's, was part of the conversation with these property owners, is to say, don't worry, we're not gonna take your stairway, we're not gonna take a corner of your building, we'll work around you.
And in that previous discussions, that was all okay, wasn't it? With
I
that owner
believe so.
of the, because I think somehow we had that discussion previously, and I think he said, well, if you're not gonna bother my property, I'm okay with it, so.
And the idea too is that making this part of the redevelopment package that the DDA has in mind ultimately will benefit those
Mhm.
property owners through increased customer traffic, a better pedestrian scape, the kinds of things that we hope they will see long-term. Arguing over 0.106 acres is probably not worth it. But that's, what you see on that map is where it lies, according to our surveyor.
Is that technically a parking lot right now? I mean, is it used as parking lot
It's
type
technically
gravel?
a vacant lot that has a conditional use grant for until April of 2019 to be used as a parking lot.
But the actual part that we need to recover isn't being used for anything. It's
Anything.
actually so
It's not
close to
enough
the
room,
building,
right?
it's
No.
just
Yeah,
it's just a
it's in the way.
straggly
strip of-
piece of, alleyway.
I know the DDA executive director's been reaching out to those property owners for probably the last 6 to 9 months, meeting with them individually, trying to, make sure that they're well apprised of what's happening and explain it to them in, in a variety of ways so that, to make sure that they do understand what's happening and that this is a friendly eminent domain. This is not somebody coming and taking their property. We're just trying to clean up those property lines.
But they don't own the property.
Right.
Well, it's not theirs.
It's not
I mean,
theirs,
There's
but-
no record that it's
Mhm.
any of anybody's, yeah.
Right.
But if
There's
somebody
an
wanted,
assumption, yeah.
if somebody wanted to make a claim to it and say, no, I own it, then they need to prove it.
Right.
Mhm.
And if they can prove it, then yeah, we probably are in a position where we need to discuss reasonable compensation. But from what we've seen, there's nobody in that position. But, this case could bring that out, and if it does, that's okay too, we'll sort it out.
Is there a public notice or something like that, that if you feel like you do have a claim to this property, you have until this date or something like that? Is that,
Here's how it works, Paul. We will actually deliver papers to anyone whom we know on the list. When the title company comes back and shows me anybody who might have an ownership interest, we'll serve anyone on that list who is still living. I mean, that we can still find. There will be some that are, long past that will just say are unknown persons. If they are unknown, or if we, through due diligence, can't find them, then we publish notice in the newspaper. It's just like being served, except
Right,
you're served by
right.
publication. So, to answer your question, we'll specifically notice all those property owners, even if they're not on the list of people that the title company says is legit. We'll notify all of them, we're going forward, here's a copy of the complaint for your file. To the extent there are people who are either unknown or that we can't find, then we'll do another notice by publication. We gotta wait the 28 days for an answer. Once that time's done, then we're free to go in front of the judge and get things squared away.
And it's such a narrow strip, because what is that distance-wise? I mean, depth,
It's minuscule.
minuscule. I mean, I would think that's probably, it's almost due to
I think it's 10
No.
feet, isn't it?
No, I
probably a
think
survey
it's even less than that, yeah. it's-
75 years ago or something.
Right, and that's kind of where
They
people
think
kind of went.
it got left because of the railroad, things went back and forth between the railroad there and some things, and so, yeah, it's just a phantom.
It's an orphan. So that's what I'm asking. If you're all okay with that, I will include that, with this resolution in final form for official action on Monday night, a week from tonight.
Everybody okay? Okay.
All nod?
You
Thank
got the thumbs up, Mr.
Okay.
Carter.
Good.
Sooner the better.
I will turn this back over to you then, Madam Mayor.
Okay, item 2, wastewater grease program and enforcement policy for restaurants. And tonight, we have Mr. Terry Walker is gonna present that to us. Terry?
Yeah, so, in your packet or on your computer is a memo regarding that. Give you a little history. We've had problems with restaurants not abiding by getting their grease traps cleaned on time, and it has caused problems for us. There's basically a couple of them that are still in violation right now. Thus is why we're trying to get some teeth in this ordinance to where we can go after those. So we want to admit all the fats, oils, and greases, and petroleum, oil, grease, and sand. And so as part of that, Kim Emil helped us put together some guidelines and enforcement procedures so we can go about getting these restaurants to abide by our code. So Kennedy and Jinks was hired. They're a private company to start this program for us last year, and they spent the last year putting together all the data, who all needs will be enforced, and give us all that information. And as part of that, our municipal code, the way it stood, we were very limited on what we could do. And when it boiled down to it, if we found someone tampering with sewer, that we could arrest them. Well, none of this was the way we wanted it, so.
Disturbing the peace, by the way.
Yeah.
Was the charge.
Staff developed an enforcement procedure and policies that we feel give us the enforcement or teeth that we need now. And that's section 4.5 now will be in our code book, where they have to be in compliance and what the enforcement guidelines are. So failure to comply with this may result in the suspension of their water and sewer services, depending on how many times the violations occur. So everybody gets one violation during the year, but more than one is when we start having a financial impact. So on 2 failed inspections, there'll be a $200 fine. After 3, it'll be $350 fine. After 4, it'll be $500. And then if it's more than that, then we can shut off their water and sewer, and then they can write an appeal to the town manager, appealing the process. He can hear everything, he or she can hear everything, and then decide whether, we were right in doing so or not right in doing so. So this was all brought about with Kelly's blessing. We didn't think it needed to go before the town board. Kim made all of these changes. Of course, Kelly's now gone, so I'm not sure, Nia, maybe you can help out, whether we need to have it under consent calendar for town board, or whether we can, with the board's blessing, we can just amend the code and be done with it.
Here's how I look at it legally. The code already gives the town manager, and thus through the town manager down to Terry, the authority to administer the sanitary sewer system. That's, that it flows through from you to the town manager under existing code powers. So we probably don't need to modify the code unless you feel it should be in the code for notice to the public or some elevated level of enforceability. Right now, Terry, through the town manager's office, has the authority to do this as part of his administrative rules. So he, as the town manager's delegee when it comes to the sanitary sewer system, can adopt these rules internally, and it doesn't have to be in the code. It doesn't require any further blessing.
Even the administering of fines and stuff like that?
Yeah. Just like the utility department has all of these rules that apply to utility accounts, those aren't all in the code. Those are delegated as an administrative power from you through the code to the town manager, because the town manager is the hub of all of these different operational wheels. So my sense is that you are not required to do anything to the code. What Terry's really telling you is, we want to start enforcing this internal policy to protect our sanitary sewer system. the code says you can't introduce gum and grease and stuff like that into the sewers. That's already there. And the code already says if you do, you can be arrested. Well, we don't wanna arrest people, we wanna stop these discharges. So this policy that Terry's talking about was developed to go directly to the source of the problem, allow us to inspect. If they pass the inspections, great. If they don't, then there are ways to make certain that they do. And, you know, if they don't cooperate, yeah, we can discontinue, the code currently says we can discontinue sanitary sewer system to any address that keeps doing this. Well, how do you do that? You can't put a plug in the sewer line. You have to stop it at its source, which is water service.
Right.
You just discontinue water service.
Ian
So
and
this
Terry
makes all
and
that clear.
Patty, I think that, I normally don't feel this way about it, but this time, I think that it would give it a little bit more clout, particularly as we grow. And I think if we branch out to other parts of town, that it would just help say, hey, it's part of the code. And, you know, you can't do it, and you need to follow it. And I agree with you about the arresting and all that. But I just think we give it a little more clout. And it sounds like you've been having problems the way it's been going.
But don't you think the change in the language in the program, that I think will give it enough clout in itself? I don't think we need to add code. I don't know that that necessarily would add anything. It seems to me some of the additions that they're recommending would give Terry or his team, because Terry, my question to you is, those that are not in compliance, is it because they can't comply, or there's just not, there is not a consequence if they don't?
Yeah, there's 2 restaurants right now. There's no consequence if they don't. They have just decided to draw a line in the sand and say, we're not gonna have our grease pits pumped out. Well, those tend to cause problems for us because as those grease pits get full, then the grease overflows into the sewer main, and then you have these big clumps of grease that starts backing up the sewer, and it impacts several businesses in downtown. So all restaurants, of course, will have this, all meat cutting establishments, filling stations, all of those types will have to have some type of separator. For whether it be sand, whether it be grease, whether it be oil, whatever the case may be.
Because now, if they don't comply, if we adopt these changes, there will be a continuation of fines all the way up to whatever at some point where you'll say, we're cutting off your water, and I think that would be a huge incentive to comply.
Right.
If they're not gonna have water service.
Terry, I would think that if it weren't a problem, you wouldn't have and maybe it's because of talking to Ian, you wouldn't have wanted to come and talk about this. So evidently, it is more of a problem than you want. Am I right about
Yeah,
that?
it's becoming a bigger problem all the time because all the more restaurants and stuff.
But he's not
that we get.
asking us to make it code, Ivan, he's just asking us to
Well,
change
I
it.
didn't mean, I didn't care what it is, but it sounds like it needs more teeth.
Right,
And what he has now doesn't have any teeth.
right.
So a resolution would add, and what, few words, paragraph or 2? What does that add?
Ally's
Except
asking
for
us,
giving him some power that he doesn't have.
he thinks adding these changes to the document he already has will give him that power.
Right.
To the policy, and, you
To
know,
the policy.
we do that through our utilities. We just have a policy that, you know, once we explain and provide the policy to a citizen, they're right on it. And I think, you know, I would recommend we just implement like Terry has recommended. And if, you know, 6 months down the line or 3 months down the line, we're finding that, we need more teeth to this, it does need to be in the code, then we can come back to the town board and ask for that ordinance change.
So in 10 or 15 years when Terry's gone, maybe, would this still be, without being in code, it would still be, the next person would still follow
Mhm.
this? It would be passed down, is what I'm saying, it would be up to them to change their
Sure.
mind?
Correct.
And Terry's informing you about this to make sure you're aware of it. So that, just like Patty would say, look, we're changing our policy when it comes to landlord-tenant utility accounts, just so that when somebody calls and says, they cut off my water service to my restaurant because of some silly grease trap, you'll know, oh, so that's that thing we talked about.
Right.
But it's, the authority for it is already in the code. The town manager, and thus Terry has the authority to adopt rules to make certain that the basics of the code, you can't put gunk in our sewer line, are implemented. So that's why Terry's got the power now. This actually gives the operators, the customers, a fairer way of, that tiered inspection thing, and if you fail the first time, we'll give you a break, a second. It actually treats them more fairly than Terry showing up and saying, I hear you're dumping grease in our system, you're cut off. It builds in some fairness to everybody, and it's still true to what's already in the code.
And who does the inspection?
Kennedy Jinx is right now the company that we've
Okay.
hired. They do 2 a year for every establishment that is in need of inspections.
How many
And-
establishments do we have that need these?
I knew that question was gonna come up. I can't remember exactly. There's a lot more than you think, though. There's
Gas
like
stations.
60
Oh,
in that area.
okay.
Here is our regular grease program that we have so we, as town public works people, can know what it says. We know what size the grease traps need to be. You can't have any grease traps inside the building, has to be on the exterior of the building. And so if anybody asks, what's your inspection criteria, I can show them, we have everything in place, so.
So who at Public Works in Windsor familiarizes himself with this policy? Just you as the department head?
No,
Or
myself
your
and,
whole entire group, or?
myself and Dennis Markham right now.
Okay.
We're the 2 key people in
Oh,
it.
yes.
I will have to get someone else involved in it as well, because Dennis doesn't have the time to do it. I don't have the time to do it, so we'll bring somebody on board and train them and what it takes. And that'll probably be Mark Herrick or someone else from the utility division.
Okay.
So quick question I have, there was a notation about, it's recognized that some existing facilities may currently have interior grease traps or no traps. So,
That,
let's say you've just got Acme Restaurant and they've only got an interior trap, and to be in compliance, they're going to need to install an exterior. Would they be allowed more than that 15 days? I mean, as I looked through it, it looked like if they failed, they've got like a 15-day window to remedy that.
right. We would probably give them more time for that, but right now, everything has to go through our planning process. Everything has to meet our standards and specifications. So that's not gonna happen very often unless a restaurant buys a bookstore and they want us, serve food out of it, then we're gonna require them to put in a grease trap before they can even, start the restaurant. So in the old days, yeah, that happened a little more often, but not so much anymore.
Okay.
My only concern, and I don't know if it is legitimate or not, so that's why I'm throwing it out there, is let's say we got a business where it's cheaper for them to pay the fine than it is to come into compliance. Especially if they know they're only gonna get tested a couple times a year versus the cost to retrofit their system or have it pumped regularly or whatever, that and maybe this is worst case scenario and I'm playing devil's advocate and asking this, but I just know how some businesses can think, where they're thinking, it's cheaper for me to pay a couple $100 fine and then it'll be $3. And looking at their bottom line, they're going, it's cheaper for me just to keep paying the fine than it is to come in compliance on this, knowing maybe what they think the cost estimate would be to retrofit their system, et cetera. And so if there was to become a business that played hardball with coming into compliance, do we have it in black and white? Because here's what I think, and this is the reason I ask this. We get to the point where we're shutting off your water. And then they get their lawyer to contact the town and go, our business is in trouble without water. We've been paying the fines. Yes, we haven't come into compliance, but then they have their legal team affecting you know, whatever, and I'm just, do we have the teeth or the muster in the backing, or does it need to be even on consent calendar or something else, just so that it's got the official meat that a legal team from a restaurant or something like that couldn't come back and try to say, well, this actually was never a part of the code, or, you know, that's the only reason that I ask, is just so that we've got our bases covered, even if we have somebody that wants to play hardball with this.
Well, the thing about that is grease traps are needed to catch all the grease.
Right.
So everybody knows that, and that's part of the code. And if you fail to have it pumped or inspected, then you're in violation already, so.
Right, so it's already in the code that we can shut off sanitary
Okay.
sewer service. What that really means is we can shut off their water.
And
So
Ms. Emo looked this over, and so we did have an attorney look at this and try to.
Like I said, I wasn't sure that it's a legitimate question to ask, but I'm just asking it for the sake of
Kim and I and
making sure that we have all our bases covered.
Dennis started working on this like in September. We had several meetings, so I think it's good to go. It just, we need some teeth, so the two that aren't complying, I think once we shut their water off, they will come into compliance.
You think it will go that far?
I hope not, but
Okay.
They'll get fined before that.
Well, I think it makes sense to have some interim steps between warning, shut off, you know. I think that fine structure definitely makes sense to be able to say, okay, first you got a warning, now you got a fine, which kind of is that wake up call that, hey, maybe you need to pay attention and take this seriously. And then if they continue to accelerate that, then
And what
I
if they
feel
don't
like
pay
they've
their
earned.
fines? What's the consequence?
if they don't pay their fines, then the water stays off.
Oh,
But that's the only reason I brought the example back of a business saying it's cheaper for me to pay the fine than it is to come into compliance. Especially if they think the town's kicked the can for years telling me to come into compliance or whatever, and it hasn't transpired.
And Terry, that's,
okay.
go ahead.
Ken?
I'm very supportive of this and very appreciative that you're doing it. A couple of questions. One, how does this compare to the communities? Do we need to communicate to all of our businesses out there that there's some changes coming? I don't know if we need to or not. And I also wanted to know if it was stringent enough to cause enforcement. And then the last part is, they're only inspected twice a year.
Yeah.
So if they're in compliance, it's no problem, but the businesses are not in compliance right now. Can we go in and inspect them tomorrow morning?
Oh, yeah.
And how quickly can we implement the new fines?
Well, I'm kind of leaving that up to Kennedy and Jinx, because they're the
Okay.
expertise, and they have the expertise in all of this. We did check with all the surrounding communities to see what they were doing, and that's, most of them are shutting off the water, because that's the only way you can get their attention. Because by shutting off the water, they can't be in business.
Right.
And so, you know, that gets their attention, and they
Right.
usually comply.
So you feel that is stringent enough, that's kind of what
Right.
the communities are
When
doing?
inspections are done, they have to date it and initial it, the people doing the inspections of the grease traps.
Mhm.
So they can't forge any documents or anything like that. I mean, it's all on black and white and in paper, and there's nothing they can do about
And
it,
then they have a
so.
certain time period to make
Right.
correction, and then we go to step 2,
Right.
step 3, step 4.
See, each restaurant's grease trap is based on the number of seats they have in the restaurant and how much food they serve in an hour. So the smallest one you can ever have is 500 gallons. That's the smallest one, and then it goes on up from there depending on the usage. And there's a formula that you gotta calculate everything out.
With the couple restaurants that are not in compliance now, how quickly could we implement it?
Well, Kennedy and Jinx wanted us to make the town board aware of this. Now that we have done that, I can tell them that everybody is aware of that. Now they can start educating all of those facilities of what our plan's gonna consist of. Let them know ahead of time that they will be fined, and their water will be shut off if they continue to not comply.
So Kennedy and Jinx will be the one who will be delivering that
That's
information. And is the plan that we will always be contracting with them to do this, or do you foresee in the future a person from our own public works would be doing the inspections and da-da-da-da.
I think we can bring it on internally at some point. We wanted someone that, in the field, that has done this time and time again, to get it started. Once it's started and we have everything implemented, I think then we can bring it in-house, as long as we have the staff to be able to do it all.
And how do they charge? By the
When they,
contract you go see, or just by the project and every 6 months, or you pay them monthly, or,
Kennedy Jinx, we pay them just so much a year,
okay.
so.
That was gonna lead into my next question, which is, if we had a repeat offender that all of a sudden tomorrow we're going, hey, now we got the grounds, we're sending Kennedy and Jinx back out there, and this business has been fined, are the fines covering the cost to have them have to go back out there and, I don't know, yes? Okay. I mean, I just figured there should be a cost recovery if there's a repeat offender, that whatever their fines or fees would be that are covering the
See,
additional
right now,
cost of the
that
town.
everything is implemented, all Kennedy Jinx will do now is educate them, and then they'll do the inspections. And then if people aren't compliant, they will let me know, and then we can then go shut the water off at those establishments, providing that they haven't paid their
I just wanted to make sure
fines.
that the fines recover our costs, whatever would be involved in having a, you know.
And it sounds like we would pretty immediately target the 2 offenders,
Yes,
so we could try to get that, I think, to your question, Ken, try to get that resolved or fixed as soon as possible, so we don't have a
right.
bigger problem than maybe
And
what we already have.
They have been in non-compliant for about 2 years, so it's been the same 2. So we're gonna,
And why did we not enforce our present policy of arresting them? No, I'm not being facetious.
Well, it's kind of the question,
You know, if
first of
someone's
all,
playing that game,
who
you know,
do
it's
you
a stupid
arrest?
arrest, disorderly conduct, but that was the policy, and they're gonna play that game, then great. We have SWAT team.
the corporate
I
CEO,
thought it was a little heavy-handed there,
Joe.
Dan.
Terry, does Kennedy and Jenks, do they, I foresee there needing to be some sort of documentation. We have to provide the warning, we have to provide them a timeline in order to pay. We need to have some sort of process with that. I also think that, I know you said Kennedy and Jenks will be doing the education, but I think a letter needs to come out from the town of Windsor with potentially a link to the new policy to those businesses with, you know, your contact information and Kennedy and Jenks information, so that they're aware of what's happening. I mean, I know we can start on this like tomorrow, but I
Right.
think it's been this long, I think we need to go through that, a
That
proper
was one of my
procedure
questions,
to
too, is
make.
how are we gonna communicate this, so that
Mhm.
we're being fair on
Right.
our end?
Yeah, yeah,
Right,
and I think,
exactly.
yeah, there just
Right.
needs to be, and we need, you know, and if, Terry, if you want Kim to work on this with Jess or something like that, Jess created some really great processes for utilities, for notifications and things like that, but definitely need to, cause I'm thinking if someone, there's 2 or more failed inspections in 1 year, and then if we hit, then how much time do we need to wait until that 3rd failed inspection? Do we,
Yeah.
I mean, do we give them some, we need to give them some time to be able to pay, you know, whatever's adequate or whatever's reasonable. And then, you know, how we turn off their water and we create that work
Right.
order and things, so. we can
it's
work on that.
outlined in the inspection procedure.
Mhm.
So, yeah, all that'll be covered, and we can make that happen.
Okay.
Now, this policy and these procedures are only applicable to commercial
Yeah.
folks?
um,
Because I think when you get down on page, is there a page on here?
Mm-hmm.
It's towards the end, it's like the don'ts and the do's. I think some of our I think it's good information, and we should even send it to our residents, because, I mean, I know our residents maybe aren't offending at that level either, but
Sure.
I don't know how many folks, I mean, I know some folks who put everything down the garbage
Yeah.
disposal. I'm a person who never puts anything down the
Yeah.
garbage
Or what they're
disposal.
washing down their driveway.
See, we have put
They have
in
maintenance
water
oil
bills
and
before.
They wash it down the driveway.
And I just thought there were some good do's and don'ts, and I don't know, I think we
It's a
should
good
use
idea.
this opportunity for communicating out to our businesses, we should communicate some of that same message to our residents and make sure when we are doing that water conservation
Yep.
thing
Can
again,
add that in.
we could bring some of these, we could probably copy and paste a lot of these do's and don'ts for our citizens.
The worst thing besides grease we find in our sewers is like those chlorine antiseptic wipes.
Not the wipes.
Oh, yeah.
People flush them down their toilet,
Oh, gosh.
and that plugs everything up.
Some are flushable though. Are you talking about the Clorox?
The wipes that you
Some
wipe
are,
down.
some are not.
It says they're flushable, but
Some
they're
baby
really
wipes are
not good.
flushable.
That's
Oh
a
my
lot
gosh.
to
This one, yeah,
run down that
It's got
sewer
some of those.
system.
Flushable?
That's, one of the thoughts that I was contemplating here is, what about harm to the system? I mean, do we have any way to know, like these two offenders that have been offending for quite some time, is there any way to know
Yeah, because
how, the pipe below their business is 80% clogged already because they're, or something, I don't know, I'm,
the only way we know now, without spending a lot of money, is when we start getting a backup. One of the other businesses will call and they'll tell us that, their sewer isn't flowing right. We'll go down there and then we will check the manholes, jet the line, and then what we pull back usually tells us whether it's a problem or not.
Oh.
Because we get a lot of grease coming back. So,
Yeah.
but, just imagine a 500 gallon pit, and as it fills up, the water keeps going over, but as it gets so high, then everything else is washing over. And, then you have grease, about that long and about that wide in the sewers. So,
And how do you ever alleviate that or fix that or get rid of that? Are you done?
with our truck, we can get it out, but it's a pain.
Okay.
And then we gotta TV the line to make sure we got everything. And, it's, if we can get everybody following this program, then it won't be much of a factor.
is that just, that procedure, is that just a cost that the town absorbs of just normal maintenance? I got a call about a, backup into my business, and you're, in your mind, you're thinking, oh, it's probably that business that's been our, whatever, but you can't necessarily pinpoint it, but you have a good theory, but yet the town's gotta dedicate time and manpower and,
Right.
all of,
The other thing is that CIRSA, our insurance provider, requires us to jet all of the town within 2 years. And we document all that. So we'll do half of the town 1 year and half the town the other. Now, I'm gonna tell you, this last year, we didn't get all that done because we didn't have the people to do it. But as long as we have that, then CIRSA will deny payment to any individual, because we're doing our due justice and performing the maintenance required, so,
you have the equipment that you need though,
yeah,
right?
yep.
My only other comment would be in the letter that you included in the packet, I would maybe, when you start that out, have something a little bit stronger that just, you'd say that, as an owner operator, you have certain requirements this letter introduces, but I would maybe say, we're changing slightly, we're changing and taking it very seriously, and or something, I would strengthen that letter in that first, in a couple of sentences, that gives folks a heads up.
Changes are.
Per what Ivan was driving at, that lets folks know we're serious, and we've changed the policy to reflect offenders, and, we're gonna be coming after them or something.
With cuffs,
So,
Yeah,
we'll
we
be
can
making
make that.
arrests.
Yeah, we can fix
I
it.
think it just needs a sentence or two,
Your
and,
wallet.
but I
with the
would
cuffs.
strengthen it and let them know.
Yep, July 2017, yep, been working on this for a while.
but these times are changing. With Bob Dylan.
Okay.
Yep, sounds good, maybe we can work on that.
Well, I was gonna say, Terry, you said a little while ago that they know it,
Oh, there's that.
but I think there's another thing to knowing, and that's believing. If these business people are just saying, well, okay, and goes back to what Paul said about, I'll pay a $200 fine, that's cheaper than me fooling around with it. Well, okay, then that becomes a belief. Do they believe that you're gonna do something? And I think. if
Or the
it's
cost
done-
of getting a bigger trap. Maybe they know they need a bigger trap, but they never put the, you know, they went cheap. I don't know what all of the rules are and everything.
You know,
else.
we never had anything to force them to do it, now we will. And so hopefully, once they find out that we do have the teeth now to do something, then the two establishments will start to,
And I guess that's what I was saying, Terry, that we need to make them believe it too, as well as know it. And
When we have a new business go in that has, who's our code?
safe build.
Safe Built. Do they have some way to determine what size pit that the people, the
Yes.
business needs to have or something based upon?
Like I said before, they'll look at what the maximum seating capacity is, and then they have a formula that they run to tell them how big of a grease pit that they'll need.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm getting the consensus that you have the board's approval and, you know, to move forward with this, and I think that they are very interested in this.
And I'll have either Ian or Kim look at the letter prior to us sending it out to make sure that it says what we want it to say.
I think they would be interested to know the outcome too, so in about 2 to 3 months, if you have anything else to report, if those folks moved into compliance or not, I think.
Or if we need to send Ivan down there to talk to him.
Funny.
So,
Sounds good, thank you for your time.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Well-
Restaurants to boycott.
may I, it's not on the, is there more of agenda than I?
There's just the future board meetings, what else?
Okay, could I mention one thing? I don't want to get you in trouble, Terry, but Terry just mentioned that, to me, that one of the problems they're having with the snow removal and all that, he doesn't have enough help. And then he also said just a little while ago, he doesn't have enough help to do all this investigating and all that. And I guess I'm just thinking, Terry, if you need more help, you know, we've said it almost every budget meeting, let us know. And if that's a problem, and I see it all the time around town, they just don't have enough, they might have the machines, but they need men to run it.
Well,
And-
next week at our work session item, that's exactly what we're gonna be talking
I
about.
didn't want to wait
It's a
till next
perfect
week.
segue.
The investigations isn't really an issue because we outsource that. I mean, we have that, right? I mean, they're doing what they're supposed to. and-
Right.
But we also talked about him taking it on eventually, which,
In the future.
uh,
And
That's
Ivan, I
evaluate.
can tell you, if you talk to any department head at the town of Windsor, they're gonna tell you the same thing.
oh, I know.
Please
But
understand.
while he's here, I just
It
wanted
is-
to mention.
It is universal.
Yeah, it's not just me, but.
No, it is
all the
universal.
departments.
I hear that too
That's a
from other
concern as we
directors, and
grow.
so,
They are all working hard.
and we're
Keeping up
growing,
the
we're
service
growing,
level.
we're growing. I
Yep.
don't know how many times I say that.
And in my memo to you guys for next week's work session, I'll talk a little bit about what I think needs to happen in order for that to take place when the new town manager comes on board and
Mhm.
so on and so
Well,
forth.
hopefully there's a couple things we can take care of pretty quickly. I'm hoping, once you get all your numbers down and stuff.
Okay. Well, good luck with your grease pit.
Yes, and Terry, I've
Your
been
greasy project.
I've been through
It's a
this
slippery
packet a couple
slope.
times, and for some reason, I did not see
The
this
pit of
notice of
despair.
violation till just now. I have
That's
looked
a
through it 3 or
slippery
4
slope.
times, so I apologize. You already have that in there, so thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Moving on then to our last item, future town board meetings, so.
So, yes,
This isn't something that's in there, but something I wanted to throw out, and I kind of mentioned it to a couple of you informally Thursday, but if we can find time to squish it in there somewhere, I think it would be really worthwhile for us as a board to meet with staff similarly to what Drew did as part of that candidate process, so that we have the same kind of information and mindset when we go into that candidate process. So not something that happens after we get candidates, but kind of ahead of time. I think I would like for all of us to have that same information that Drew has for looking at what's gonna, obviously it's up to us to make that decision, but I think that the staff's input would be valuable in helping us make that decision. So that's something I'd like to see put in here somewhere before we get to that.
Okay, we could
March.
do that, or I can reach out to Drew. I know he kept some notes when he met with the town, with the department heads. Maybe there's something I can share. None of us took notes while we were in there, I mean, because that was our time to talk. So I do know Drew took some notes, I can see.
Because it was only an hour?
Yeah, it was
There
only an
wasn't-
hour.
So there wasn't a lot.
No, there wasn't a lot. No,
I
there
mean, there
wasn't.
was information that was shared, but
Yeah,
not
and
like.
we also ate in that time period, right, Terry? So that took
I will
15
touch on a couple things next week, that not only what was said with Drew, but what was said in our
Right.
assessment with Novak, so.
So do you want me to see what Drew has and we can go from there?
I would like to hear, I agree, I would like to hear the reactions or thoughts of staff, as well as I'd like to hear what the rest of you said also. So I'd be okay with either looking at his notes, or if Patty, if you could give us a summary of what you've heard from various department heads and staff.
Wouldn't be
I just-
surprised if that would be part of his plan, but I can't remember. if
Yeah,
it
I
was
don't,
part-
you know,
to give us
I
all
don't
I
know
think
that.
we kind of put a
Yeah.
snafu to it, to having that happen in the notes that I read. And I guess I'm all for, it'd be a good time to meet with the staff, I mean, the directors and, just talk.
Well,
and
but I know,
hear what
I know
they're-
they're all running extra busy right now, and so rather than maybe a time, I'd like to start with getting the notes, just to see, and then we can see from that.
Okay.
Well, I know he said he had 22 pages of notes from all of his stuff that he
Yeah,
was interviewing.
because I know he
from,
met with.
I mean,
all
I
the
think even the rough
stakeholders
stuff,
and-
if he can just send his document, we just like to see what the thoughts were.
And then if.
It doesn't have to be who said it necessarily.
Right,
we
but
just like-
just a summary, and then if I don't know what's considered his property and whatever, but let me reach out to him and see what he can share. And if it's a specific document of summary notes, then I can forward it on to the town board. And then if you see that and then you want more information, then maybe we can,
Because is he
Work
not
on
coming back now till
March 5th.
And that's when he's gonna be presenting kind of a
Right.
short list of
March 5th.
Well,
candidates.
remember, there's stakeholders'
So-
comments in there too, so I mean, it's not
Right.
just,
Good to hear
it's
all
also
Oh,
with
well,
the
I
external
have a
community.
question.
Yes,
You wanna go first?
No, go ahead.
My concern would be anything they've said in confidence.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
So
Mhm.
getting his notes, I think would be valuable, but especially with stakeholders, it would be pretty obvious what their interests are and where they
right,
want.
yeah, depending
So I
on who
don't
the
know.
stakeholder was.
That would be my concern.
Right.
I mean, if they wanna come in to meet with me, that's fine, and
Mhm.
tell us face to face, but I don't want them to think they've said something in confidence to Drew and then have to get back to us.
Right.
That would be,
Well, and I'm
Right.
sure he'll know what he
okay,
can
yeah, that would,
present to us
Yeah.
versus
And
what
that could
might.
be part of the presentation too.
A summary of the themes that we heard.
Yep, I
think would be
can,
really
yep, that's
helpful.
pretty much what I just jotted
Yeah.
down, so.
Well,
I
I
don't- I don't
don't
know.
know, I mean, I completely agree with what Miles is saying, at the same token, it's, when I sat down, it wasn't like he said, I just want you to know this is in strict confidence, whatever you're gonna tell, so there was never any preface as far as,
yeah, but staff has a different, I mean, this is their jobs and,
Right.
I don't know.
It's different for
You shut the
staff.
door, so I kind of assumed we were having a private conversation.
Well, he took all of our names as department heads when we would tell him what our concerns were. So I think he'll probably include that in the notes, I don't know.
He
Do you want to
specifically
include-
said he would
Yeah, I
not
don't care.
attribute particular statements to
Yeah,
particular.
I don't wanna know what
Yeah,
individuals
especially when he
said.
was
And I think that's
candidate.
probably
No, I don't wanna know.
good.
what
Yes,
individuals
I
said.
would agree.
Probably
So
better
to me,
for
maybe
us.
that's
So
something
general
to have
summary.
his synopsis that maybe
Yep.
gives
Yeah.
us the big picture.
well, like when he sat right here and he spent 5 minutes and he was just going through this,
Right.
all these different points,
Mhm.
that's exactly what, I don't care who said it, I just,
Right,
to
right.
see,
I don't wanna hear names.
Yeah,
right, is
yeah.
there a theme
No,
about
and I
something, right?
think, let me check in with him, and I'll let you all know
Yeah.
tomorrow. He said he's really great about responding fairly quickly, so, if I can get that summary document and send it out, then, and then if, like I said, then if you think you want more information from a specific group, then we can work on that.
Well, I think that's something, if he can get it to, especially in like an email doc,
Mhm.
that's something we can all kind of digest on our
Yeah.
own, and then determine, do we want to have a formal meeting about it, and talk more, or
Mhm.
how do we want to handle with what we are seeing
Right.
information?
Information never hurts.
Yep,
Yeah, I think that's a
agreed.
good first step
Yep.
to start there and
And go
go
from there.
I also am very interested, maybe we get into this when we actually start interviewing the candidates and we talked about, but I respect all of your views. And I gave him a page of my notes, because I've been doing it a few minutes, so I
Mhm.
typed everything out and gave it to him. And I'm willing to share that at appropriate time, but those were my views. Some point in the process, and again, maybe we get into this when we actually interview the candidates, but I want to hear from each of us what we think is going to be the award-winning town manager for the
Mhm.
future.
Yeah.
Well,
That's a
I did the same
conversation.
thing, Ken.
Did you
I
get
typed
notes?
2 pages out because I wanted to make
You
sure I
did too?
said everything that I wanted to say to him.
Overachiever.
I only got one page, you did too.
Well, I'm sorry,
He
I
double-spaced.
always say more. Takes me longer to say.
He's got 4 extra years than you on the board, so.
Yeah, but we each have different perspectives and different views, and so
Mhm.
that synergy of all that, I think, will be really valuable
Yeah, I think
for
that
us.
makes sense.
Where
for
it
us to
fits
have
in the
a
process.
conversation About those things.
Yeah.
So how could we have that conversation?
That's
Like
just
if
what
we
I was gonna
all-
ask.
We all have, if we all, like, if we had a dinner in that private room at Pelican, just the town board members, do you have to post, I mean, do you post that, or what, if we're just gonna have, and whoever wants to come can come, but we
Mhm.
could have something like that away, you know,
Yeah.
I'm seeing like on February 19th, town hall is closed, are we not gonna have a meeting that night either,
No, because it's not a regular meeting night.
February 19th?
No. The
So will we
12th
still have
the
a
12th
work
and then the
session?
26th.
Oh,
Or will that?
oh, you're just alerting us to.
Yeah, I'm just
okay.
saying that town hall's closed.
Well, the 19th is a Monday, where we would have a work session.
Right, normally you have a
19th
work
is
session, but it's
President's Day.
President's.
But I don't know if you guys had planned, but I'm just thinking, what if we did something like that? By then, we would maybe for sure have whatever we would get, been able to look through it, you know, and,
Well, and by all means, the public's welcome to come. I mean, there's nothing we're talking about that the public wouldn't be
yeah.
welcome to hear, you know, or,
But I'm thinking just something kind of,
Sure.
you know, informal, offsite, all of us around a table,
It's a
and
3-day weekend, so we may be.
maybe not.
But schedule it, and if I can't make it, I.
Well, I just threw
I
that
wanna
date out
stop
there, it doesn't
something.
have to be that date,
our
Miles.
kids
It
off
could
school on
be-
that day.
Yeah,
Yes,
It
they
could
are.
be something else maybe, I just kind of,
no, it's,
So then we don't have a regular scheduled work
No.
session that day?
No,
Okay.
I have not scheduled anything since town hall was closed, staff wasn't gonna
Oh,
be
you have a
here.
work session.
That would normally be a work
that
session.
would normally
yeah.
be a work
It's-
session. So I
a
just,
holiday.
I just threw that out there. We also have, but I don't know if we'd have it in time, the fifth
Yeah.
Monday of this month.
Yeah, I
That's
don't know.
kind of, you know, I don't know, especially if it's 22 pages, I don't know if that's gonna take him a while to put together or not, I don't know.
You captured a lot in that profile,
Mhm.
I thought, and you did that overnight, basically. I was
So we should have the profile, I'm hoping to have the PDF of the profile back tomorrow, and then send it out to everyone again, just for another cursory review. Sherilyn provided me some comments today, she really thought about it over the weekend and had some ideas that I think I'll throw out to you guys tomorrow once we get that PDF document back, but, just some terminology and some things that I think make Windsor sound better. I mean, just to
When's it officially go out?
as soon as we can get that PDF document done, they'll go on ahead and start shipping it out, so.
Are we still on track according to?
Oh,
his
yes,
schedule?
in fact, we're ahead of schedule, we're doing really well.
Well, I read all of the comments from this group, and I thought they were well done, and if Sharon has some comments, that would be good too. Because it is a time for us to sell this town, and to the new town manager, and so.
So the filing deadline for the resumes and applications will be February 20th. Just as an FYI. Related to the recruitment, we talked internally a little bit about the community meet and greet. We've seen it done a couple different ways. We could hold it over at Public Works and have somebody come in and cater it. We've seen it like at a restaurant where you kind of just take a portion of a restaurant and pay for, you know, light hors d'oeuvres and, you know, soft drinks or whatever, and that makes kind of for a community feel. But a couple different, you know, there's options out there, so just want you guys to kind of think about it a little bit.
we did the police chief, we just did it at the rec center, didn't we? We didn't have to.
It was
did
in
we
the
have
senior
it? No, I
lounge.
think we
It
had
was
it.
in
did
what's
it in
in
the
the now the
senior
senior lounge.
I think that the police chief was a position where we could get away with that. The town manager position is certainly an elevated position, so we could certainly do it at the rec center's really busy. I don't know if we could get in at the rec center, to be quite honest. We might be able to do it over, like I said, at the Public Works facility. I could talk to Jason Schaefer over at Hearth and see if we could use his restaurant. Monday nights are slow for him anyway. I don't know.
I like the idea of Public Works. I mean,
We could show off the facility, and that's, we could
There's
certainly get it
parking.
catered and
as long as there's enough parking, but kind of have it as an open house for an hour or two or something like that,
we
because
could certainly do that.
there's room for
Mhm.
side conversations, somebody wanting
And
to talk
that's
to us.
part of it, maybe we, have some round tables in there, some high tops from CRC or something like that, dress it up a little bit, so that it looks,
And that's set for Monday the 19th.
that's set for Monday the 19th, and once the finalists are solidified, Drew said that he would get with the town board to determine the schedule of how that works. Who interviews, who do you want those people to be, all of those pieces. So the 19th and 20th, the only thing I know for sure is the 19th is in the evening, we'll have that candidate reception. But that's all I know. Ian is working on how that process works between the interviews and review of the resumes on March 5th. How that, because as of March 5th, none of those candidates are considered public. It's not until they become a finalist that their information becomes public. So you need to review their information. So how do we make that work in the public setting in order to be able to keep those names confidential? So Ian and I are gonna talk about that tomorrow, figure it out.
8:30.
What do you mean? But by the 19th, they would be, would they? They would be made public because we'd be down
14
to,
days.
we're talking about meeting and greeting with maybe 3 to 5 candidates, right?
The finalists.
Finalists, right? Or
Yeah, and
whatever
that's
that
fine
magic
on the
number is.
19th.
Well, and don't
It's
forget,
the-
they might bring their families
the-
and everything else. I mean, that turns
It's
into.
the March 5th date, right, that I'm thinking about.
How we talk about that?
So
About-
basically say Drew brings
Mhm.
us 10 people that we're discussing to
Oh,
whittle down
that's
to
what
Right.
you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking, on March
Those-
5th, how does that discussion happen? It's a regular
Can't do
work
that in
session
one-
night, and we don't know if it can be executive session under
Okay,
personnel,
gotcha.
or we're not quite sure, so we're trying to figure that out.
We'll have it figured
Okay.
out by tomorrow
Okay.
Yes, we will.
at 9:02.
9:02, yes, we'll have it figured out by 9:02.
Okay, and then Miles, I double booked on January 18th, so
I
you'll have
heard,
to
yeah.
take the lead at that, at the meeting with Loveland this Thursday.
Yeah, looks like a lot of work has been done on it, so
Yeah,
that's
so,
exciting.
A couple more things. So I've been working on the advisory board banquet, that we usually have in April, but due to the election, we're trying to push it up to March. We looked at potentially maybe having it out at the summit this year, as opposed to maybe giving out all the gifts and things like that. We can bring it in, our budget for that event is $5,000. We can come in at about 4,500, and that's just a cursory look. We can play with the menu and bring it down a little bit, I'm sure. But that would be for Eagles Nest area, similar to what we do for the holiday party for staff. And when you guys come to that, but bowling and game cards and all of that.
you know, those folks that come to that come for, I think, the only one reason they come is, it's a time of recognition. So many of those folks volunteer of their time, and this is just me. I think that is not a good arena for that.
Okay, I thought you're the one that had said
Well,
that you wanted to do that.
But again, well, no, if we do something like that, I think that that's just what it should be, is that you just come, I mean, that's why we're thanking them, instead of giving them their
Something, their
Windsor
jackets.
jacket or shirt.
Okay.
It's come to play bowl.
Mhm.
Which otherwise, I think, I'm just, otherwise I'm thinking, it's not a place though to give
I
them
know.
recognition.
Yeah.
It's too
And I was
noisy, it's
I was
loud.
gonna say the same thing, because
It is
basically,
loud.
I think the summit was nice when we did it that way, for the purpose, but I think from this one, we're giving
I mean, for the holiday
recognition.
party.
Yeah, the holiday party was fine, but I think that it needs to be more, and where they like to sit together, and it's a hard place to sit together out there.
It
And
is.
then loud,
No.
Well,
noise, it's loud.
And
I
I
mean,
like
it's
to-
okay if we wanna thank them and it's, come out here and here's your $20
Right, have a
to
blast.
go do
Okay, I get
whatever
it.
you wanna
Okay.
do. But even some of those folks, I don't know that they would come and do.
Do
bowling
and bowl,
or
I know,
laser
bowling
tag.
is a struggle for me.
Well, it's fun to sit with them
It's, I like that.
and talk to them and, yeah, recognize them, so that's
The-
probably
the-
not.
Yeah, the problem is, and the reason why I think Patty and I, we were brainstorming
Yeah.
about other things is
Yeah.
the attendance every year goes down and down and down. I'm wondering, do you think we'd have a better attendance at a breakfast?
Or maybe
Or a
it's just
lunch,
a different location.
or
You know, the
something
rec center's
different
just, it's
than
the
an
rec center.
evening?
It feels cold, you know.
I don't know, I think that,
and whereas-
I don't think the
Space.
breakfast, personally, I don't
Yeah,
think
I
it
don't
would be
think
as good, but, I mean, I know the tree board just comes, you know, they're all there, but how do we get them all to come to that? And I guess they need to feel it's more important somehow, and,
well, it's switching it up a little bit. We tried to create a little program and things like that, but maybe it's location and maybe we contact a couple of our local restaurants and see, you know,
Yeah,
can
how
you
about,
serve?
how many do we
It's
have to look
generally about
for?
60.
60?
Usually come in about 60. And we may have more if we move venue and create it more of like an event, you know, a dinner.
And they can bring a guest?
Yep, so that's including the guests.
Yeah, that's nice.
So
I can
usually
tell you,
comes
when
out
I went
60.
last, there was a lack of connection. You know, we nominate and hire, the board
Mhm,
fills those positions,
mhm.
but that's only 2 members of the board that are
Right.
typically in on those. So if,
Yeah.
odds are, all of the advisory board doesn't know who the board is. I'm just saying, you know, we all sat at different tables. I think that there was still this lack of
Mhm,
finding out I mean, they may know who we are, but
mhm.
They don't really communicate.
there's no relationship other than that's what I'm saying, it was,
Well, and I
Well,
think
the
with,
opportunity before
with
we
Summit-
had dinner was really nice, because we could walk around, more like a reception where you could walk.
and maybe that was the
Yeah.
problem, that it was at the rec, cause it just feels kind of like. you were
Everybody's
saying.
got their same table they go sit at. I mean, the
Right.
room's always arranged the same, you know, it's just always the same.
well, I wonder with the Eagles Nest, I mean, obviously bowling is very loud, but is that room very noisy if no one in that room is bowling?
It's not that bad.
It's not
'Cause
that
I'm
bad,
just
but
thinking-
it's kind of expensive for just
Yeah,
that,
just
I
for-
think.
Well, no, I just
Yeah.
meant like, could you have a portion where, you know, we start out with open bowling or whatever, and then we take a short break, you know, half hour or so, to say, okay, we'd like everyone to take their seats, we're gonna recognize the board members, still do those introductions, and, cause I think from, at least from going through those events for several years,
That's
it's
right.
nice to get a chance to see, oh, okay, I've heard this name that's on
Mhm.
the Parks and Rec board, but because I'm on this other board, I don't see
Right.
them.
What about like the rec room down at Pelican, you know, where they have
Or
all
the
the
banquet,
fun, the
I was thinking the
room?
banquet room would
Yeah.
certainly hold, but I
That's
think,
nice
we
enough,
need
but
something a little bit more smaller, a
Yeah,
little
but-
bit more intimate.
But yeah, it
and
makes
I-
us,
So that would work, I don't know, but I wonder if the Hearth would be willing to.
depends on the night.
Well, if it's a
Is it
Monday night,
big
well, now,
enough?
of course, we can't do it
How
on
about
Monday
Embassy
night.
We
Suites?
could, there
To rent one of
is-
those rooms there.
We've done that with our,
Well, they serve good food and all that too.
They also have a volleyball
How
bar.
you feel, but you know,
Embassy.
Saturday night, that was impressive, that crowd, that the Chamber of Commerce had. That was a
Oh,
big,
Thursday?
big crowd the other night,
Yeah,
at the
regional.
Regional
the
event.
regional thing.
oh, yeah.
I mean, that was
Well, you
regional,
can rent that room up at the Eagles thing, what's that called,
That's where our
looks
meeting is on Thursday night.
Up
It's at that
there,
restaurant.
can't you?
Oh, at the restaurant?
Oh.
At the restaurant,
We
At the
can rent
ranch.
that.
at the ranch.
Yep, if it, depending on available dates. I mean, I could,
I don't know.
We'll
Check
take a
Embassy
look. We'll
Suites
take a
too,
look.
I think that's.
Yeah, we'll
uh,
check
That's
Embassy
not
Suites.
bad
We can check
idea.
around a couple places. I just wanted to make, We
Yeah,
were
and I'm
trying to-
sorry,
Oh,
yeah.
no, it's like, and Jess only spent about 5 minutes
I
on
know, that's what
on the
I'm saying.
phone, and I'm like, I think this is what Christie wants. She goes, well, I'll pull some numbers for you and let you know, so
Yeah.
we're good.
I mean, I think,
Say it.
yeah, and I just know that group, I think that majority of those folks would rather get their wins or something than, they're not
Just 'cause-
that, the bullying.
But I think if we provided them a nice dinner somewhere, I think they.
I like the Embassy Suites thing, just because they have their servers, they have
Yep.
their everything
Yeah,
else.
and
they
there's
can,
the bar over there, so if people wanted to go afterwards and have some cocktails just to hang out, that might,
I think
that's
they
all.
serve dinner, like there's a place in that lobby bar.
Yeah, there
They have a
is,
restaurant
but
too.
that's usually for their patrons.
I
up
like
there.
both those environments you're talking about. Lowell hasn't about spending money outside of our town,
I
but those are the
know.
nicest areas. Just a thought, in the next week or so, we'll each be meeting with various groups. Should we maybe ask them what they would like? What would encourage them to actually come to awards?
You know, I've never done a survey, so, I mean,
And I don't think a formal survey, but
no,
just
but just to
informally.
ask.
Yeah,
Well, are there certain boards that are well attended versus don't?
Tree board always
tree
comes,
board
planning
comes.
commissions,
Parks
there's
and Rec
always
comes.
It
parts
just
of that.
depends.
Yep.
But it just seems like
Planning
the
is
numbers
about
have
half
kind
of
of.
them.
Oh, they are
every year
dwindling, yeah, I
bit.
used to have 75, and now I'm down to 60.
So we need to push our boards,
Right.
we need to reach out to them, encourage them.
Well, and if you're worried about keeping our monies local, then we should just
Well,
have it
that's-
at Pelican in the
That's not as
banquet room.
big a deal for me, I just.
Because
I
that
had
is
thought a
Windsor,
little
that
bit.
is.
Yeah, it is Windsor, and again,
That's
it's got the
About the
bar
only
over
Or the
there
barn.
and stuff too.
hold, I
Or the
think
barn.
60.
Remember the night that we had that, meeting out at that building on the north, 257?
Yep, the,
What is that? Because that
It's-
was a
it's-
very pleasant,
it's essential, it's mostly a wedding venue. They do hold meetings out there and
because
things
that
like
was
that.
a good meeting, I
Where?
remember.
I
What's
can't
it
think of the
called?
name of it, I always think of
It's
the
a big
first.
building just
I always wanna
north
call it like
of the
Windsong or
14.
something.
Yeah, isn't it Windsong?
It is
I
Windsor.
think it
Is
is
it
Windsong.
Straight north of
Something like
Oshner's.
Well, I just thought it was a nice meeting, a nice
It is,
meeting.
it's a beautiful venue.
And
Where the new light at 14.
It's a beautiful venue.
My concern about in-town money is this big compared to what
Yeah.
works for people.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
And Embassy Suites are really nice.
of course, Patty, would that be Windsor?
No,
No.
and they're pretty expensive,
That
but
north
they
one.
might give us a deal
Are
on the
they?
north
I
night.
didn't know about that.
Yeah, they might give us a deal
Well,
on the
but if
north
it's
night.
also nice enough, a lot of the people might be willing to bring their spouses and
Right.
stuff like that too.
Right,
What
I
do we
know,
encourage
make it
more
more of
people
an
to come?
event,
You know who
yeah.
the HR director is at Embassy Suites now? Terry
Um,
Billingsley.
Really? Interesting. Good job. That's nice. I have one more thing to
So
update you
we
guys
get
on. Eric Lucas talked
Used
to
to be
Stephanie
before Ken
Watson,
used to work here.
and apparently their
Might
bids
charge
came
more.
in really low on their new Severed School construction. So they're gonna be able to add some items back in. It means that they will be issuing the town the previously agreed upon 2-year notice of intent to purchase our portion of the shared maintenance facility. So more than likely, we'll have a 2019 budget implication. The school district had wanted to wait until a new town manager came on to provide that information, and I said, if we wait, I mean, all the work Eric can start doing in these 3 months, you know, beforehand, it just didn't make sense to me. So,
So the part that
Parks,
Parks and Rec is
Uh-huh.
using,
yes, we're getting kicked out.
we're getting kicked out.
We're
I
getting
wanted to make
kicked
sure I
out.
was hearing you
Yes,
correctly.
yes. So they're gonna, from what I understand, and I haven't looked at all the documents yet, is they will buy us out of our half. We jointly own it, and I don't know what that price is, or if that's even been established.
Couldn't that be a blessing in disguise?
In the original
Yeah.
contract, they
Yeah,
have
the
to,
price is right.
they have to pay us whatever the
Well, just so
going
that
rate
we can be
is
done
Okay.
with
for
it.
commercial
Yeah, you
property
would
per
know.
square foot.
Perfect. So this will give Eric an opportunity to start doing to brainstorm and dream and investigate, and I'm sure, you know, the town board will be heavily involved in those discussions, particularly since it'll be related to budget, but wanted to give you all
When
a
is it?
heads
When
up.
is the intention to?
So I think it'll be 2019.
That we have to be out?
Mhm.
Giving Eric the opportunity to brainstorm would be
Is
exciting.
dangerous. Exciting for you. I say dangerous.
So here's a loaded question though, what did Parks and Rec move into that space when they moved out? When you guys moved out, what did Parks and Rec move in there? What do they,
I haven't been in it since we moved out, but they remodeled the inside and made more offices and
It's mostly forestry stuff.
remodel?
Yeah, Yeah, remodel, there was some money put into it,
Of course.
but you'll be happy to
Aren't
know
there
that our
three of
public
those
works
rooms now
facility
that
came
are
in under
forced
budget.
offices?
We met with Will Welch
And-
today, so you guys will hear more
Wait.
about that
What?
next week, but,
What came in at the budget?
the public works facility.
Oh, okay.
If you haven't been out,
Expected.
the change they made is
It's
absolutely
really nice,
fantastic
yep,
in that building.
yep, and we are gonna sell it off.
It'll be worth more after the
I
remodel.
like this.
That's right, so just wanted to give you all a heads up.
Okay. Anything else?
So let me get back to this real quick. The Parks and Rec moves into that space.
Mhm.
Where did those people come from? Where were they?
They were still there, it's
They-
just in very
just
cramped
crowded.
facility, they were like two people
Oh,
to
they
a
were already
desk.
housed there? Or they
Two,
just
Yes.
2 or 3 people.
spread their
Now,
wings? a
It
little
was
bit?
so tight, they were so tight.
Well, I knew how Public Works was in there. I didn't realize
Yeah,
that Parks
Parks
and
was
Rec
in
was
there, yes,
Oh,
just Parks,
And they all have some offices now, so it's
just
nice.
Parks, sorry.
yeah, it's,
All right.
I think that's all I have.
Okay,
Thank you everyone for your patience with me.
we concluded
Sunday
our
morning.
work session for this evening.
Gotta continue to pass on thanks to you, Patty and Ellen,